Imagine a battlefield where the weapons aren't guns or bombs, but words. Carefully chosen, subtly twisted phrases that silently slip into our minds, shaping how we think, feel, and act without us even noticing. This is the essence of linguistic sanitization, or euphemism, and it has become an important part of the matrix we live in. It can and has been used as language warfare against the people. It's not about overt propaganda screamed in numerous protests across the world. It's the quiet art of reframing reality to advance an agenda, and it's been going on for a very long time. Today, I'll take you through this concept as a predicate to an upcoming video about how the Galactic Federation emissary is being targeted by deep state factions. There's a clear effort to silence her, and I don't want you to fall prey to the misinformation and be led astray. So I would like you to really listen to this video about how words and events can be twisted to manipulate your thoughts and emotions. We'll draw on real-world examples to show how deliberate word choices manipulate public perception so that you can recognize when your mind is being manipulated. It's very powerful when you become immune to mind control. We'll focus on instances often attributed to progressive or leftist agendas. But in the spirit of truth-seeking, you must understand that this tactic is bipartisan and used by all sides to influence hearts and minds. Think of this as a brief exploration into how our perception can be influenced. Let's start with the basics. Why does language matter so much in politics? George Orwell warned us in his essay entitled Politics and the English Language that sloppy or manipulative language leads to sloppy thinking, and in his novel 1984, he coined newspeak as a tool for controlling thought. This visionary has been one of the most accurate predictors of where we find ourselves today. In modern terms, this is about framing a psychological concept, where the way an issue is presented influences how we interpret it. Psychologists like Daniel Kahneman have shown that our brains are actually wired to follow emotion over logic, so emotional wording affects us more than plain facts. That's why we are so easy to manipulate. This is an art of formulating words in a particular way to influence us. For instance, euphemisms are used to soften harsh realities, making unacceptable ideas palatable. Desensitize do the opposite. They vilify opponents with loaded terms. And subliminal programming? It's the subtler cousin, repeated phrases that embed ideas below conscious awareness, like a drip feed of ideology through media, speeches, and social narratives. Who hasn't seen a video demonstrating the same carefully crafted phrase coming out of 20 different newscasters' mouths? Now consider the example of the phrase, undocumented migrants versus illegal aliens. On the surface, it's just semantics, right? But dig deeper. Illegal aliens emphasizes criminality, and illegality evokes lawbreaking. Aliens suggests something foreign and invasive. This language is technically accurate since illegal aliens have criminally entered the country from a foreign homeland. In contrast, undocumented immigrants, or undocumented workers, which are terms promoted by the left and controlled media outlets, attempts to normalize sneaking through our borders or remaining in a country without authorization. Undocumented implies a mere paperwork issue, like forgetting your ID, downplaying any intent to break the laws of a country. Immigrants also connotes legal migration and the American dream of opportunity. The goal is to normalize the presence of those who entered without authorization, framing deportation as inhumane rather than just. This term isn't accidental, it's deliberate and contrived. Organizations like the Associated Press updated their guidelines in the 2010s to favor undocumented, arguing it avoids labeling people as illegal. But if they are illegally here, why would we want to normalize criminal activity? This play on words manipulates our empathetic nature and emotionally invalidates the crime by denying the truth. Basically, the term undocumented migrant is akin to calling theft unauthorized borrowing. It decriminalizes the act in the minds of those who are manipulated. This pattern repeats across borders, literally. During the Biden administration, officials described the surge at the U.S.-Mexico border as a challenge rather than a crisis. A crisis implies urgency, failure, and a need for drastic action, whereas a challenge sounds manageable, like a puzzle to solve at one's leisure. Facilities holding migrant children were rebranded as reception centers instead of cages, which was a term weaponized against the Trump era to evoke animal cruelty. The cages were actually used under the Obama administration, and they were called reception centers. Border security became border safety, softening any militaristic tones to prioritize humanitarian aid. These shifts, often echoed in Democratic talking points and progressive media, aim to diffuse public outrage as it portrays enforcement as overly aggressive. At the same time, these self-proclaimed humanitarians are advancing policies that will reward these criminals with pathways to citizenship rather than punishment for breaking the law. It's subliminal in its repetition. When you hear the term challenge enough, the immigration chaos feels less alarming to the programmed. Let's pivot to another arena, environmental policy. Global warming was once the go-to phrase that conjured up images of melting ice caps and rising seas, creating alarming responses. But as skeptics mocked it during cold snaps, advocates shifted to climate change, a broader, less debunkable term that encompasses any weather anomaly. This reframing was pushed by figures like Al Gore and environmental NGOs with leftist leanings, and it became linked to everything from droughts to floods under one banner. The purpose was to seemingly justify sweeping regulations that erode more of our freedoms. More recently, the terms climate crisis or climate emergency has amped up the urgency. It also villainizes any dissent or denial. The manipulation is that these carefully chosen words programmed us to see natural variability in climate as a man-made catastrophe. As a result, many financial pipelines were created for government funding earmarked for global warming research. We are now learning that much, if not all, in some cases, actually ended up in the pockets of the corrupt. In social issues, the left's language playbook is critical to their vision. Pro-choice versus pro-abortion or anti-life. Pro-choice frames abortion as a personal freedom, evoking feelings of empowerment and rights. It holds that it's not about ending a pregnancy. It's about reproductive justice or bodily autonomy. This euphemistic shift is championed by groups like Planned Parenthood, which normalizes the procedure by focusing on the woman's rights and marginalizing any fetal considerations. Similarly, gender-affirming care for transgender youth replaces sex reassignment surgery or hormone blockers by making interventions sound supportive and medical rather than experimental or irreversible. Make no mistake, the deliberate choice of words to embed a particular perception of something is subliminal programming. Repeat these affirmations of these behaviors enough times, and opposition seems bigoted, not cautious. What about the deep state? This term, often invoked in what was deemed conspiracy circles, has now come into the light of mainstream media. You see, each truth that they villainized will become undeniable, and the talking heads will shift into another well-planned narrative that has been prepared for them. In case you don't know, the deep state is a hidden, unelected network within the government, career officials, intelligence agencies, and bureaucrats who resist, sabotage, or override elected leaders, like President Trump, to protect their own power and agenda. They work inside the system, often covertly as opposed to the puppet government, who are a visible regime installed and controlled from outside that appears legitimate but follows external orders, not the people's will. This very term is often manipulated. When the left uses the term deep state, it might involve dismissing investigations as witch hunts, or framing whistleblowers as leakers rather than heroes. Does this sound familiar? During the Russia probe under Trump, terms like collusion were used loosely before evidence solidified, programming public suspicion. In broader terms, systemic racism and institutional bias reframes our societal issues of crime and rampant immigration as inherent flaws in structures, not the actions of individuals. The tactic has been used for harmful actions like defunding police, which has been rebranded as reimagining public safety. What they never reimagine is the risks. But this very notion embeds a belief of perpetual oppression, mobilizing votes while dividing society by design. Subliminal elements creep in through repetition and media echo chambers. Computational propaganda, bots, and algorithms are amplifying such phrases, effectively turning social media into a warfare zone. Memes, those viral images with captions, embed ideas faster than speeches. During elections, they program biases subconsciously. The deep state term is a conservative frame, portraying government as the shadowy manipulators that they are, just as liberals frame all of the wealthy as corporate overlords. In closing, it's important to recognize that language warfare is a double-edged sword, wielded by power brokers to shape our perception of reality. Whether it's softening immigration crimes or vilifying opponents, the intent is control by subliminally programming us to align with agendas. Awareness is our defense. Question the words, seek the facts, and remember Orwell's warning. In a world of manipulated narratives, truth-seeking demands vigilance from all of us, regardless of our political leanings. Thank you for joining this exploration. I hope that it can help you see through the fog of the matrix to be able to identify and evaluate events more accurately. Let me close with Orwell's warning that I mentioned. Whoever controls the language controls the mind.